There are 5 things you should do at the start of every game. First, put a pawn in the center. This is always a good first move. Second, develop your knights. You and I are fighting to control the center and put our pieces in good places. Third, develop your bishops. This is a good square for your bishop because it attacks several squares in my camp. Fourth, don't let me take your pieces for free. Defend your pawn on e4. Good, now your pawn is protected from my knight. Fifth, castle as soon as possible. You can do this by moving your king to g1. I too need to castle. Using these 5 principles, your army quickly deploys to maximize its lethal potential. Now let's practice the 5 principles. Putting a pawn in the center is always a good first move. Your turn. Right. Now develop a piece and attack the center. That's a great opening move. Let's look at another example. Let's go again. Practice makes perfect. I will try different moves against you so you can learn how to apply the principles in different situations. That's it. This is called the Sicilian defense. Never go up against a Sicilian when death is on the line. This is an excellent move that attacks the center and targets the focal point on f7. Let's start from this position. What should you play? You remembered. A nice move, developing your bishop and preparing to castle. Let's go further into the game and see how the 5 principles apply. As usual, start with your pawn. Following our first principle, I will also put a pawn in the center. Our second opening principle is to develop the knights. Move yours to f3. Your knight is attacking my pawn on e5. The best way for me to defend is to follow our principle and develop a knight that also protects my pawn. With a pawn in the center and a knight developed, it's time to bring your bishop to c4. Following our opening principles, I will do the same. With a pawn in the center and your knight and bishop developed, it's time to castle. I would like to castle too, but I have to develop my knight first. My knight attacks your pawn on e4. Push your pawn to d3 to defend. Now I can castle. Continue your development by moving your knight to c3. I need to develop my bishop on c8 next, but before I do, I have to move a pawn. Complete your development by moving your bishop to g5. I will also bring my last minor piece into the game. Both our armies are well developed. This will be an exciting game. Now let's get some practice with that opening setup. Start by moving your pawn to e4. I will also put a pawn in the center. Next, let's bring out the knights. Move yours to f3. Again, your knight attacks my pawn and I will develop my knight to defend it. Now, think about our opening principles. What is a good move here that you could play? Indeed, beginners do well to learn one opening and stick with it. Let's begin again by moving your pawn to e4. And I will also move my pawn to the center. Just as before, develop your knight to f3 and attack my pawn. I will defend with my queen. Developing the queen early is usually a bad idea, and this is no exception. What is a natural opening move that you could play here? Nice move. Don't let my queen distract you from developing. Once again, start by moving your pawn to e4. I will also put a pawn in the center. And again, develop your knight to f3. I will break with our principles and develop a bishop before my knight. Your move. That's it. Following principles is important, but you also have to look for opportunities to win material. Dr. Wolf has something interesting to show you. Start as usual. I will challenge you directly. This is called the Scandinavian defense. You can't ignore my threat. Capture my pawn on d5. Bringing out the queen early is not a good idea, but here it is the only way for me to recapture. Now develop your knight and attack my queen. I must waste time to safeguard my queen. Before continuing to develop, move your pawn to d4 to put a pawn in the center. Our second principle is to bring out a knight. Here I go. Your turn to follow the second principle. Now I will develop my bishop and attack your knight. Calmly continue developing by moving your bishop to e2. You're ready to castle on the next turn. Castle your king. I have one more piece to develop, but I have to move a pawn before I can bring it out. Move your bishop to e3. In only 8 moves, you've completed your development. All right, let's go back a few moves in the Scandinavian defense and let you try it for yourself. I'll play this. Your turn. Developing a piece is an excellent idea. Well played. The 5 principles can always help you find a good move in the opening. Let's say I play this. Your turn. Nice job noticing that your bishop was in danger. My turn. I think I will check your king. How will you reply? Blocking the check and developing a piece. Well played. Another excellent way to open the game is by putting your pawn on d4. My pawn will confer with yours. Next come the knights. Develop your knight to f3. Again, I will follow our principles and develop a knight on my second move as well. Now bring out your bishop to f4. This is an excellent square for your bishop. Now move your pawn to e3 and make way for your other bishop. Following our opening principles, I'm going to move my bishop in order to castle as soon as possible. Bring your bishop to d3 so that you can castle. Your bishops are well placed to patrol the board. Whoops! Pushing my pawn to c6 didn't accomplish anything. I should remember the principles. For you, the principles would suggest developing your knight to d2. You have 4 pieces developed, and I only have 2. I need to catch up. Complete your development and castle your king. I would like to develop my bishop on c8, but it has nowhere to go. I'm going to castle instead. In only 7 moves, you have completed your development and castled. A challenge for you. Castle in only 2 moves. That's it. And now? Well played. Now let's make this challenge a little harder. Your challenge is to castle kingside in only 3 moves. Good luck. Nice move, preparing to bring out your bishop. I've developed my bishop and now I am ready to castle. Your turn. That's an excellent square for the bishop. Your turn. Nice job solving the challenge. I have another one for you. Just like in our last example, you want to develop your pieces and castle. Start by developing your knight. That's it. Now you're 1 move closer to castling. I developed my bishop so that I can castle on the next move. Where will you develop your bishop? Now your bishop is patrolling both sides of the board. I castled. How will you continue your development? Following our opening principles, I'm going to develop another piece. How can you complete your development? Nice job developing all of your pieces. If you can achieve this in the opening, you will have a successful middle game. In this challenge, your pawn on c4 is hanging. How can you defend this pawn and castle kingside as quickly as possible? Now your bishop defends the pawn on c4. Nice move. How can you castle kingside in 2 moves? That's it. Your turn. Nice job applying our principles and completing your development. Let's try the principles in another situation. Start with your king pawn. I will play a different defensive setup. Your muscle memory should start to take over. Move your knight to f3. My turn to bring out a knight. My knight attacks your pawn. Develop your knight to c3 and defend. Let me try something a little different. My plan is to develop my bishop to g7, but first, develop yours to c4. Now my bishop will occupy the longest diagonal. It's time to castle. I will also follow the principles and castle. Move your pawn to d3 to make way for your bishop. I could develop my knight or my bishop. A good rule of thumb is knights should come out before bishops. Now develop your bishop to e3. Your bishop patrols both sides of the board. We have set the stage for an intense battle. My turn. I think I will develop my knight and attack your pawn. How will you reply? Developing and defending. Nice move. Let's say I'm a bold, aggressive fellow and I take your pawn. Your move. Well played. Thoughtless aggression got me nothing but a bloody nose. All right, new position, my turn. I developed my bishop to attack your knight. Your move. Your knight is well defended, so continuing to develop is the right idea. Excellent move. In this challenge, you will have to be on your toes. Developing my knight attacks your pawn on e4 a second time. How will you respond? Pushing your attacked pawn is an excellent idea. Well played. Let's look at the Spanish, one of the most popular openings. Move your pawn to e4. Both sides begin by moving the king's pawn to the center. Develop your knight to f3 and attack my pawn. Following the principles, I will develop a knight and defend the pawn. Now develop your bishop to b5. This move is the hallmark of the Spanish. I am attacking your bishop. Retreat to safety on a4. Here comes my other knight. Threatening your pawn on e4. Push your pawn to d3 to defend. Now I will attack your bishop again. Retreat once more to b3. Back to developing. Time to bring out a bishop. You're ready to castle. And I will do the same. Continue developing. We both have one bishop left to develop. I will place mine on b7. Complete your development by moving your bishop to g5. Our pieces are well placed for the strategic battle that lies ahead. Now let's get some practice. I'll play this. What will you play? That's it. All right, let's go back and I'll try something else. What is a good move that you could play here? Castling is an excellent idea. You're getting a solid feel for how to play the opening. Let's say I develop my knight and attack your pawn on e4. How will you respond? Defending your pawn and opening up a diagonal for your bishop. That's a great move. Let's look at a common trap that ensnares beginners. Start as usual. I will follow suit and put a pawn in the center. For this example, move your knight to c3. Now I will develop normally. Continue by moving your bishop to c4. Seeking a hasty victory, I bring my queen out early. My plan is to checkmate you on f2. This move violates our principles and can be punished. Move your pawn to g3. Having moved my queen once, now I must move her again and fall further behind in development. I again threaten checkmate on f2. Develop naturally and move your knight to f3, preventing this. Your queen defends your knight, so I cannot capture it. I have one idea left. My queen and bishop battery point at your f2 pawn, but there is no reason to panic. Castle your king and complete your development. I wasted 3 moves with my queen while you calmly developed your pieces and castled your king. Your position is far superior to mine. Let's see how you respond to this attack. Your move. Well played. Again, I have violated the opening rules by bringing out my queen early. Do you see the best way to stop my checkmate threat? Kudos on seeing this capture. I have one final challenge for you. Dear student, let's see what you've learned. My queen radiates menace. What can you do? There are many moves here that develop and defend your pawn on e4, but that is not one of them. Let's go back and this time find a move that defends your pawn. My queen radiates menace. What can you do? Developing and defending. I see. I will apply more pressure. My knight and queen are teaming up to cause you a problem. Can you solve it with a principled move? Attacking my queen is a clever solution. Well done. Good work completing this lesson. If you put a pawn in the center, develop your pieces and castle quickly, you will succeed in the opening. Checkmating is simple once you know how to do it. Start by advancing your king to c5. Notice how your queen has trapped my king against the edge of the board. Only a8 and b8 are available for my king to shuffle back and forth. Your king must participate in this checkmate. Step your regent to b6. My poor king is trapped and can only shuffle back to b8. Now deliver checkmate with your queen by bringing her to b7. Sorry, that wasn't the right move. Let's go back and look again. Now deliver checkmate with your queen by bringing her to b7. Your king protects your queen, who is both checking my king and attacking all of his escape squares. March your king towards mine, and only move your queen once to deliver mate. You did it. Let's look at a slightly harder example. Your first goal is to push the enemy king to the edge. Move your queen to f6. Your queen creates a barrier around my king, limiting where he can move. Now move your queen to e7 and trap my king against the edge of the board. I cannot move into check, so my only choice is to run to b8. With my king trapped against the edge, it's time to bring your king into the action. Advance him to c5. I can only shuffle back and forth as your king approaches mine. Move your king to b6, where it will be able to protect your queen. My king can run, but he cannot hide. Move your queen to b7 and deliver mate. Finito. Push my king to the edge with your queen, then bring your king towards mine to help checkmate. Well played. Now let's look at an even harder example. My king stands in the middle of the board. Move your queen to f4 to restrict his movement. Your queen creates a box around my king, limiting his options and nudging him out of the center. When my king moves one square diagonally, you can mirror my move to close in quickly. Instead of checking my king, use your queen to make the box around my king smaller. My king moved diagonally again, but this time in a different direction. Mirror this movement with your queen to restrict his options further. If I were to move to the edge, you would trap me there immediately, so I will step sideways to c7 to prolong the inevitable. Again, your queen can mirror my move and squeeze me further towards the edge. Notice how your king has not yet moved, while your queen does the heavy lifting in this endgame. Now step your queen one square closer to enclose my king into the corner. My king has no choice now but to move to the edge of the board. I moved diagonally one square, so you can do the same to trap me on the edge. My king is now entombed on the squares c8, b8 and a8. Once you have trapped my king on the edge of the board, it is time to march your king across the board. I can only shuffle back and forth as your king approaches. March your king towards mine. I have only one legal move. March your king one step closer. My king can only watch as yours approaches. It's been a long journey, but your king has arrived. Move your king to b6. The b8 square is my only option. Move your queen to b7 and checkmate my king. Now let's get some practice with this technique. Let's test your technique. Can you checkmate me? Bravo! Let's look at an example of what can go wrong. Move your queen to d7 to squeeze my king into the corner. With my king already trapped against the edge of the board, the correct plan would be to march your king. Now, move your queen to c7 and let's see what happens. This is a stalemate because my king is not in check, and I have no legal moves to make. You must be careful to avoid this draw by ensuring that my king has at least one square it can move to. If it were my turn, this would be stalemate. Move your queen to d7 so that my king has a square to move to. Now my king is trapped and can only shuffle between b8 and a8 while your king makes the long march across the board. Advance your king to b3. My king has only one option. March your king towards the action. I can only mark time by moving back and forth while your king approaches. Step your king forward once more. This technique takes time, but it is very effective. Move your king to b6 and prepare to checkmate me. Here it comes. Move your queen to b7 and win the game. You must allow the enemy king room to move back and forth along the edge while you march your king. If you take away all of the enemy king's squares, you run the risk of stalemating him. Do your best to avoid stalemate and checkmate me. Checkmate. Nicely done. Let's look at another example of what can go wrong in this endgame. Move your queen to f6. This is stalemate, because my king is not in check and I have no legal moves. We learn these stalemate patterns in order to avoid them. Moving your queen to f6 would stalemate my king. Move your queen to g7 instead. Now my king is restricted to the edge of the board, but still has a legal move, so this isn't a stalemate. Move your queen to d7 to checkmate my king and win the game. Avoiding stalemate is fundamental to mastering this endgame. Let's get some practice. Carefully avoid stalemate and checkmate me. That's it. Well played. Use what you've learned to checkmate my king. You're getting the hang of this. Here is another one. Can you beat me in this position? Checkmate. Nice technique. Here is a harder one. Can you beat me? You're getting the hang of this. Practice makes perfect. Your turn. You're getting the hang of this. Here is your final challenge. Can you beat me in this position? You got me. Kudos on mastering this checkmate. Nice work completing this lesson. I'm impressed with your tenacity. Do this lesson again if you ever want to brush up on this skill. Move your rook up to checkmate me. This is the classic rook and king checkmate pattern. Your king controls the 7th rank, while your rook dominates the 8th. You can also do it like this. Again, your king controls the 7th rank while your rook checks my king and attacks the 8th rank. Checkmate. Do you see an immediate checkmate here? That's it. Nice job spotting this mate. My king is in the corner. Do you see the checkmate? That's it. All right, you're ready for something a little harder now. Your rook has trapped my king on the 8th rank, but to checkmate, your king must get personally involved. My king doesn't have many options. Now corner my king completely. The b8 square is the only safe space for my king. And now you can play checkmate. Do you see it? That's it. You couldn't have done it without your king. Here as well, your king must approach. I will attack your rook. You must not lose your rook. My king can only move back and forth between g8 and h8 while your king approaches. Move your king to f6 to set up the checkmate. Still trapped, my king can only move back and forth. Once your king stands at g6, he will control the critical squares on the 7th rank. I have only one move to play. And now you can end the game by playing checkmate. Do you see it? You saw it. Well done. It's my turn. I'll do this. A lot of beginners would play this. Go ahead and do it. But then my king can step aside before you can checkmate me. And you could come back. Go ahead and play it. And it looks like we're cursed to dance back and forth together forever. But there is a way out. I'll show you. The way out of dancing back and forth forever is to play a move that does nothing but waste time, losing a turn on purpose. So, when I move, you must lose a turn by moving your rook. My king knows f8 would be his doom, so he'll go to h8. Now your king goes in for the kill. My king has only one legal move. And now you know what to do. As you see, losing a turn was essential. If you approach with your king to f5, I will simply step aside and our kings will not be aligned. Move your rook to g1 to lose a turn. By moving your rook, you have passed the move back to me. My king only has two options. Let's see what happens if I move to h4. With our kings aligned, your rook is ready to deliver checkmate. Do you see it? Well played. Let's look at this position again. Move your rook to g1 to lose a turn and keep my king trapped against the edge. This time, I will run with my king in the other direction. Now your king can give chase, running my regent into the corner. Towards the corner I go. Move your king to chase mine further into the corner. I know that if I move to h6, you will have a checkmate, so I will prolong the inevitable and escape to h8. Now move your king to f7, giving me no choice but to place my king in front of yours on the next turn. Your pieces force my king to the square h7. With our kings aligned, your rook is ready to deliver checkmate. Bravo! If it were your turn, moving your rook to d8 would be checkmate, but it's my turn. My king attacks your rook. Move it to safety. Sorry, that wasn't the right move. Let's go back and look again. My king attacks your rook. Move it to safety. Your rook and king control all of the squares around my king except for b8, where I'm forced to move. I was forced to move here, and now you have checkmate. Checkmate. Often you will need to lose a move. Let's test your technique with a problem. Let's see if you can checkmate me using what you've learned. Your move. Checkmate. You did it. Let's look at what can go wrong in this endgame. Move your rook to b7. This is a stalemate because my king is not in check, and I have no legal moves. This is a draw that should be avoided. The rook is ideally placed, so spend your turn to improve your king by moving him to b6. I can only move to b8, so there isn't much for me to think about. Now you can checkmate me in two moves by losing a move, as we've seen before. Retreat your rook to give the move back to me. Your rook and king coordinate to force my regent into the corner. Now bring your rook back into the fray and checkmate my king. Nicely done. Remember this technique when you have the enemy king boxed into the corner. Let's put it all together with this example. Start by moving your rook to e5. Your rook makes a box around my king, restricting my movement. Move your rook to d5 to squeeze the box a little smaller and further restrict my king's possibilities. With limited options, I have no choice but to move towards the edge of the board. Now move your rook to c5 and squeeze the box around my king smaller still. By tightening the box around my king even further, you'll push me into the corner. You cannot make the box around my king any smaller, as moving your rook to c6 would allow me to capture it. So, improve your king by stepping him closer to the action. Still trapped, my king has few options. Any rook movement would let my king out of the box, so move your king instead. Towards the corner I go. Make the box around my king smaller by moving your rook to c6. No matter where I move, I will soon be trapped on the edge. Play your rook to c7, restricting my king to the edge of the board. For the rest of the game, my king can only move back and forth between a8 and b8, giving you ample time to set up a checkmate. With your rook ideally placed, it's time to move your king closer to the action. I have only one legal move. Your rook occupies a perfect square, so the right idea is a king move again. My only option is to retreat to the corner and await the inevitable. You know what to do. Now let's see your technique in action with some practice problems. Your rook has my king restrained on the edge of the board. March your king towards mine in order to set up a checkmate. You did it. Let's look at a slightly harder example. Again, your rook has my king trapped on the edge of the board. Bring your king towards mine to help checkmate. Well played. Now let's look at an even harder example. This is your toughest one yet. Don't forget to use your king. Bravo! Now let's look at a position where my king is in the center of the board. Start by pushing my king out of the center with a check. My king must flee the check. Move your rook to safety on e4. My king finds himself boxed in by your rook. Now move your king to d2 to squeeze my king towards the edge of the board. Your king and rook work well together to push my king where he doesn't want to go. Move your king to c2 and trap mine against the edge. My king finds himself trapped on the edge, with only one safe square left to move to. Do you see the checkmate here? Bravo! Let's look at another example of pushing the king out of the center. I'll try to keep my king in the center this time. Start by moving your rook to b4. That's check, so my king must move. Move your king to e3 where he will be close enough to help in the battle. I am going to try to keep my king in the center for as long as possible. Now check my king by moving your rook to b5. Notice how your king prevents mine from moving to the 4th rank, while your rook controls the 5th rank, pushing me out of the center. Towards the edge I go. Now step your king to e4, bringing him one square closer to the action. With few options, I will try again to keep my king in the center as long as possible. Move your rook to b6 and check my king once more. Again, your king prevents mine from moving to the 5th rank, while your rook controls all of the squares along the 6th rank, pushing my king backwards to the 7th rank. Move your king to e5 and tighten the screws around my king. This time, I will attack your rook with my king. Move your rook to d6, where it will be protected by your king and create a smaller box around my own. My king is starting to feel a little claustrophobic now. There is no safe rook move that can squeeze the box smaller, so bring your king closer. I have very few squares left to choose from. Again, there are no rook moves that would squeeze the box smaller, so move your king to c5 where it will be ideally placed to coordinate with your rook. No matter where I move now, you will squeeze the box around my king smaller still. Move your rook to d7 and check my king. Your king and rook work in tandem to force my king to the edge of the board. Protect your rook by moving your king to c6. My king has only one legal move. Squeeze the box further still by moving your rook to c7. My king can only move back and forth between a8 and b8. Now move your king to b6 and prepare to checkmate me. Remember, it's important to leave my king at least one square to move to, otherwise it would be stalemate. Again, I have only one move to make. Now waste a move with your rook, leaving me with no choice but to move my king into the corner. Moving your rook to c1 is the most dramatic. Now waste a move with your rook, leaving me with no choice but to move my king into the corner. Moving your rook to c1 is the most dramatic. Unable to escape, my king is forced to a8. And now play checkmate. Well played. Now let's get some practice with this technique. You've learned a lot, I'll wager. I'll give you 3 final tests. Your move. Checkmate. Nicely done.